Viewers, welcome back this morning to the Tobago Updates morning show. This time we are chatting with Dr. Bhoe Tewarie, former Member of Parliament, Ministry of Planning, as we focus this morning on the possible minimum wage increase. Good morning and welcome to Dr. Tewarie.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
It's good to
And
have you. I think it's a pleasure having you this morning on our program. I think this is the first time.
yes, it is. And good morning to all your viewers in Tobago.
All right, well, Dr. Tiwari, let's jump right in. Give us an idea this morning. When was the last wage increase for Trinidad and Tobago, and how much was it?
Uh, well, I think during the period 2010 to 2015, there actually were two wage increases. The last one taking up the minimum wage to about $15 an hour. At the present time now, I think what is happening is that people are reeling from, first of all, the pandemic and its
Yes.
effects, and secondly, the inflation, which is global in nature but impacting on us because we are in an import driven society in terms of most of our consumer needs, including food.
Mhm.
And that is, what can I say, cutting into the purchasing power of the ordinary citizen. You know?
Mm,
So that is where the problem has arisen, and that's why the demands for wage increases. If you look at the official figures suggest that inflation is just under 6%. Um, Now, that may sound modest, but in reality, when you look at the purchasing power, you will find that perhaps 6% does not reveal the full picture that is facing the consumer in the marketplace. When you look at food inflation numbers are just under 10%. Um, and again, most people might find that that percent, 10%, is a low number when you're talking about market goods and groceries and so on. Um, the, if you look at what has been happening with workers, you have three trends emerging. One is that the private sector wages have gone up by about 10%. Government wages have been kept down with an increase of just 4%. And I think most working people are under pressure. Households are under pressure. As I said, purchasing power has been reduced. And you can also see the pressure on the companies because you might have seen the story last night with Massey trying to retrench some workers and
yes.
the union pushing back. And in many places, companies are trying to be as efficient as possible. This is a worldwide phenomenon where people have used the pandemic to try and make their businesses more effective, more efficient, etc. All right, and so that puts the worker in a kind of weak position. It puts the ordinary worker in a very weak position, not just as worker but in the marketplace. Um, but on the other hand, the minimum wage increase, if it comes, and I think it is desirable that you have a minimum wage increase, it will affect mostly the private sector
Hmm.
because most government wages have met the minimum wage standard and are generally above that. But it will affect the business community, and it will particularly affect those businesses that are struggling at a time when we businesses generally in the country have a struggle. You saw where one business in Tobago last night closed its doors.
Yes.
I think the owner was saying after 20 years, this is the first time.
Yes.
So the business climate in the country is not right. The economic policies in the country don't seem to be working for growth. We have had a 3% growth for the last quarter, but over the last 8 or 9 years or so, we have had close to 18% reduction in the GDP. So the any growth that you have is simply catching up, catching up. So if you grow by 1%, you will reduce the GDP loss uh, to 17%.
Mm-hmm.
If you grow by 2%, you'll reduce the GDP growth by 16%.
16%.
If you grow by 3%, you'll reduce the GDP loss by
15.
15%, and so on. And then on top of that, you have this foreign exchange crunch. The minister and the government does not like to call it a crisis. And my good friend, the representative for Trinidad and Guyana, said recently that there was no crisis of foreign exchange. But the truth is, there is one, and the government needs to address that. So I don't think you can take the issue of minimum wage and whether to increase it and how much to increase it on its own.
Right.
I think the government is really missing the ball in terms of effective economic policy and an assessment of the social impact of the pandemic and its consequences over the last 3 years.
Mm.
And therefore, you do not have integrated policy and holistic policy to address these multifaceted challenges that we are facing. And I really think that it's a governance and policy issue
Issue.
that needs to be addressed properly. And I don't see any effort to do it in a holistic manner. We are just dealing with these things one by one. You're dealing with minimum wage, you're dealing with forex shortage, you're dealing with inflation, etc. And this kind of picking and choosing the crisis as they appear and hit people in the face is not a way to govern a country.
All right, Dr. Tiwari, very quickly here, I want to ask you, do you believe that Tobago, because of the cost, the rise, the hike in cost of living, do you believe that Tobago is going to feel the brunt? Should there be another wage increase, Tobago is going to feel the brunt of it far more than Trinidad?
Well, I think you have to have a wage policy for the whole country. And if you do it, Tobago will benefit, Trinidad will benefit, etc. But I do take your point. Because of the production system and because of the additional dependence of Tobago, not just on imports, but transfers
Yes.
from Trinidad to Tobago, I think the price effect on Tobago some consumers is more severe. And I do agree with that. But I believe that there should be a minimum wage increase for the entire country. Because if you pay somebody $20 an hour, which would be a $5 increase, or you pay them $21 an hour, which would be a $6 increase, which is less than $1.
Yeah.
Um, Basically, for 8 hour day, a person will make about 160 or a little more if it's 21. For a week, they will make 800. Um, the I think at that level, they may not be paying taxes, because I think that I can't remember what the number is now, but I think if you earn about $60,000 a year, you do not pay any taxes. So I think that would help in terms of allowing people to live. A lot of people, you see, the problem is complicated. That's why I said we are not addressing policy properly. The
Yeah.
problem is complicated by home ownership. In Tobago, you have a lot of people who own their own homes, but you also have people who rent.
Mm-hmm.
And in Trinidad, a lot of people rent.
Mm-hmm.
It is complicated by things like taxi fares and unreliable bus transport
Mm-hmm.
and the inefficiencies in the system. In addition, you are dealing with the fear of leaving your home and to work and then leaving your work to come home. And then what is happening too is the technological changes are making are changing the nature of work and the nature of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So that is also affecting the way business relates to their employees. I mean, I think the prime minister said in his last press conference that they were going to have a spotlight on the economy. I was hoping that the spotlight on the economy will be before the budget, but the budget is on October 2nd,
Mm.
and it
Very
is
early.
unlikely that the spotlight will be before that. So the spotlight will come after the budget, after the decisions are made, and they will be explaining what they're doing in the budget. I mean, I really feel that that is shortchanging the population, and they should have had the consultation before. And my own feeling is that unless you take a holistic approach to policy, and I really mean this seriously, I mean, there are so many things from crime to the economy, and crime is affecting the economy, and the economy is affecting criminality and recruitment capacity of the gangs and the criminal elements as well. So there is a synergy there, there's a nexus. And I think that the government, given it has agreed to talk to the opposition on crime, the opposition has agreed to talk with the government on crime. I feel that that is important, and I hope that it will come to something. I hope it will not be another political fiasco. But the government and the opposition are not the only people who live in this country. And there is a difference between government and governance. And they should really talk to the private sector. They should talk to the unions. They should talk to the civil society. Come up with a social pact, a socio-economic pact for how we are proceeding over the next number of years and see what we can do. And this impasse between the House of the Assembly on the one hand and the central government on the other um, cannot continue in this way in the interest of the people of Tobago and in the interest of Tobago and Trinidad and in the interest of the nation state of Trinidad and Tobago. And we may have problems as well with the local government. We don't know. The government had agreed to local government reform. I don't know how fast that is going to be um, proceeded with. So, what I am saying, I'm not trying to make things complicated or hard for the listener or the viewer. I am not trying to talk about everything under the sun for the listener or the viewer, but I'm trying to get the citizen to understand that you cannot deal with the problems such as we have now in Trinidad. Our revenue situation is going to be horrible with the production that we have and the prices, which have not been bad for natural gas, but the production has been horrible. We don't have good prospects between now and 2027. In fact, it's going to worsen. And we need to have a serious conversation about the state of the economy and what are the options for the society at a time when you have spiraling murders and you have people who cannot purchase the food that they need to eat and do not have a sense of peace in their homes in the night because they have to get up in the morning and face the day. So I think we should take all of these things into concern and do it. And you cannot have a situation where the country is fighting with itself.
Yeah.
Tobago cannot be fighting with central government in Trinidad. Tobago people cannot be struggling just to get goods to eat. They cannot be struggling just to get transportation to travel to do the things that they need. And at the same time, people in Trinidad and Tobago cannot be living from day to day, not knowing where the next meal is going to come from. And you have about close to certainly between 25 and 30% of the population living close to the edge in Trinidad and Tobago. And these things have to be taken into account.
Dr. Tewarie, you have certainly laid it out before us, and you've uncomplicated the issue. You have laid it out before us, and certainly food for thought. Now, with all that you've said, you indicated that it is a complicated scenario. Yes. How does this wage increase? Now, you said yes, it is needed. You agree that there should be a wage increase. Do you believe it should happen now? What sort of impact will it have on the business community? You mentioned earlier on the increased cost of living, post-pandemic issues, transportation between Trinidad and Tobago, the cost, the rise in freight charges. How does that then impact the business community that is still trying to survive post-pandemic, having to increase the minimum wage for the employees? They'd have to. How does it work? How will it
Well, I
work?
think what I think businesses have a certain amount of flexibility, and they are really under pressure. I mean, nobody envies a business person in this time because it's very tough. The business environment in Trinidad and Tobago is horrible. I've been trying to register a company for the last 3 months, and it has not been easy. And it still has not been done after 3 months. Um, and the whole business environment is wrong. Secondly, when you look at the private sector, yes, some of the companies are doing well, they are making big profits, etc. The banks are doing fairly well uh, in terms of profits. But when you look at the productive side of the economy, the manufacturers, the small business sector, when you look at what is happening, you will see that any growth that is taking place is in the services sector, and that is because a lot of people are getting involved in the informal sector. They're becoming vendors, they're becoming sellers of things, etc., trying to make a living. We need to get the productive side going, and the government needs to understand that unless we can get the productive side going, we are not going to get growth. And if we don't get growth, we are not going to get jobs. And if you do not have jobs, you're going to have a problem because you're going to have large numbers of unemployed. The government says that the number of unemployed is under 6%. I mean, nobody in their right mind believes that. The labor participation rate in this country is about 54%. I mean, it is it is one of the worst in the world. So, if you don't have an economy that can employ people and can pay them a reasonable wage to live, and you don't have businesses that can make a profit and grow and create more jobs, you're going to have a problem. So the business people, if you raise the minimum wage to $20 or $21 an hour, are going to find it hard to absorb that. But what they are going to do is that they are going to try and either keep their employees as they are, maybe reduce where they can. They're probably not going to employ any new people. They are going to have to tighten their belts in other ways. And unless the government is willing to create a climate in which the business community can thrive, then ultimately that is going to affect jobs, it's going to affect income, and it's going to affect employment and unemployment. So that's why I said, I mean, this is not, I mean, running a country is not something you can do by getting up in the morning and say, well, we have a crisis here, let me fix that. It can't be done like that. I mean, you have to have a holistic view of where your country is, what are the things that are impacting on it, who is it impacting on, what do we need to do to solve the immediate problems, where do we want to go, how do we get there, what are the
Okay.
things that we need to do to get there, who do we bring into the picture and harness in order to get us there, and how do we work together for a common larger good. And
Yeah.
all of these things I think are missing in the governance uh, um, approach.
Okay, well, Dr. Tiwari, we've got to leave it there for today, but we want to thank you so much for taking the time. Certainly, we would love to chat with you at another time. Maybe after the budget in October, we'd love to hear from you. After we see what the plans are and
Yeah.
whether or not these some of these factors were taken into consideration. So thank you so much.
Okay.
A pleasure indeed. And viewers, that was Dr. Bhoe Tewarie, first time guest with us on the Tobago Updates morning show. Well, viewers, we've got lots more coming up this morning on the program. We're going to take a break. When we come back this morning, Ajay Allen is going to be joining us as we focus on the CBC Community Health Fair and the CBC Lunar Games. So, viewers, share the live, share the live, share the live.